We like to think that Indo-Europeans basically evolved from Cro-Magnon in Europe. But there's also a big problem with this. There clearly were Europeans in Sumer, ancient India, the Aryans of ancient India.
Egypt, of course, and then you can go further afield and you have India, China, Japan, and there is evidence of this not just archaeologically. You know, the temples and the shrines and the buildings are distinctly Aryan. You have the ancient texts and the myths and the legends which all speak about the white gods. You have mummies that have been found perfectly preserved with red hair and with blonde hair. The traces and the marks of our race can be found throughout the world. For example, in Iraq, the people that you see there now, they weren't the original inhabitants and they weren't the builders of that civilization. You see the Arab peoples now. But once upon a time, this was a high civilization that I think people would scarcely believe if they could go back and see it as it was in all of its glory. You would never be able to connect modern day Iraq to Mesopotamia. In historical terms, it wasn't really that long ago that we had a very high civilization in Mesopotamia, known as, in ancient Greek, the land between two rivers, and it was seen as the cradle of civilization. In Babylon, Babylon didn't start off as the biggest kingdom, but it flourished under the reign of Hammurabi, and it had all the markers that are typical of a white civilization. You had the monuments, you had the huge monuments that were built, the temples, you had the code of laws which was brought in under Hammurabi, and the taxations, the centralized government. The running of it was the model of a white civilization. So once upon a time you would never see the people that you would see there now. You would look at them and you would see white people. You certainly wouldn't see Arabs. Of course, many of the statues and the artwork in Babylon depicted people unmistakably as Aryans. Blue eyes was rather prevalent. So you have this ancient white homogeneous society that stretched back for thousands of years, which in modern day terms you could equate to being bigger than, say, New York or somewhere like that. So originally you have this high civilization, this white homogeneous civilization, which had existed for thousands of years. It comes to the point where instead of those from outside being kept out with the gates and the walls, they decide to start bringing in people from other tribes, other nations, other races. They start bringing them in to their land to do various jobs, to assist them in their civilization, jobs that were jobs and ways that were created by the Babylonians that they decide they can source out to others. So they start bringing in outsiders, people of other races, other nations, to their land. But then the ideology, which is of course anti-God, anti-nature and modern day Marxist in its root, would come in that these people should start to play a bigger part in your civilization, that they almost have become part of that civilization that you've built. So these people then began to dwell within it, to live there, to stay there. So they've come from completely being kept outside to working there, and then they're living there. So you start to have the civilization becoming diluted from how it originally was built. People start to forget who they are, and they start to unite under a false banner, an ideological egalitarian idea that they are all same, they are all one. And they decide to build a tower. They decide to take what was once separated and unite it under their own guise, under their own ideology. So they start to build a tower. And it's a huge tower. They want it to stretch right up to the heavens. And they want it to be a tower of representing their ideology as such, a tower that stretches up to the heavens, that shows them as one people, united, one language, one people, together. So they actually did build this tower, and it was absolutely huge, and it did go up to the sky. And it was their celebration of the modern ideology, which goes back to them times as multiculturalism. It was their celebration, their monument to celebrate that. And the thing to remember with this tower is not only was it a literal tower, it existed, it was built, but the metaphor for that is something we see played out in our lands over and over again every single day. We are told that we are one. We are told that we are nations of immigrants, many people, many tongues, but we shall be together as one. We're all the same. This is exactly what they did and what they were celebrating. So they built this tower up to the heavens to celebrate that. To celebrate everything which was divided, which they decided to take charge of themselves, to unite as one, to put together, and this didn't please God. God had made everything distinct and separate, kind after kind, for a reason. And the Bible will tell you what happened here, so I'm going to read from there. This is Genesis 11. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they were journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. But the Lord came down to see the city, and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, Indeed the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. And in this example you not have only the literal building of the tower, you have the metaphor for what we see in all of our lands. People uniting as one. Nobody's separate or distinct. There is no kind after kind. There is no separate race of peoples. Everybody exists just the same. But the Lord scattered this apart. He destroyed this tower that they built. But the ideology that stems back then, thousands of years ago, is prevalent now in all of our lands, and this is what we're told every single day.
The idea that you should first have mass non-white immigration into a white country, then followed by the agenda of race mixing to the point where the whites become extinct. It's not new. We saw it in Babylonian times thousands of years ago.
That's what the Tower of Babel moment was. It was a stand against, they got annihilated. They were trying to unify everything, and we were already in a semi-unified state. And they were using that to try to take ownership genetically by redoing genetic on some particular level, whether it just be, whites dating blacks. That was certainly all of the above. All of the above. All these ancient Aryan civilizations blew up in fits of self-hatred. Anytime you're subverting your organic identity for some abstract principle, whether it be environmentalism, which is just the new communism, or communism, well, it's going to end up in disaster, sure. But it always runs its course. Ancient Greece, of course, when they set up shop over Athens or whatnot, it became probably a large race-mixing haven, just like it in America. In ancient Egypt is the same plan in foot in America. I believe that the plan to genocide us is ancient. Anytime you're subverting your organic identity for abstract principles, it doesn't matter whether it's Zoroastrianism or Buddhism, it causes all this havoc. It's the same shit over and over again we're constantly dealing with. But that's still a closed system. Every time our race does that, we end up browning out.
Is today, for the first time, we're seeing that this agenda, as done thousands of years ago in Babylon, is not just for one particular white country, it is for all white countries. All white countries must first have mass non-white immigration, just like in Babylonian times. And then secondly, all white countries must have a melting pot, i.e. no more white people in white countries. It's not a conspiracy theory, the facts speak for themselves. The reality is it's an anti-white genocidal agenda is taking root in all Western countries. That doesn't explain why it happens. I'm simply explaining that history teaches us that this does happen. And it's happening now. Very simple, it's happening right now. If you sit back and think about it.
This idea of multiculturalism we see espoused today so frequently from every facet of society. It's not new. People would like to believe that it's new, and those that don't seek to support it are old-fashioned. No, this ideology goes back thousands of years. It goes back to our history for a long, long time. And what it leads to is what you see in Babylon. No white people, a society gone, a people's disappeared. And we will end up the same way if we don't stop it. It's as simple as that, you know. History can serve as a lesson for us, and this isn't new, and we're doing exactly what's been done before.